Your Ford truck or SUV is quietly destroying itself from the inside out, and it is doing it using the exact factory settings you rely on every single day. Most owners have no idea that the software configurations programmed into their instrument clusters and powertrain control modules are actively sacrificing long-term mechanical survival just to hit microscopic emissions targets and post artificially inflated fuel economy numbers on a window sticker. You buy a truck expecting it to last 300,000 miles, but the manufacturer has optimized the programming to merely survive the powertrain warranty period, leaving you to hold the bag when the cumulative, invisible damage finally turns into a catastrophic component failure. Today, I am exposing 5 factory settings that are causing hidden engine damage and severe mechanical inefficiency without you ever knowing it. Setting number 3 has caused more premature turbocharger and cam phaser failures in my shop than almost anything else. And setting number 1 is so deceptive that owners actually think it is a beneficial feature when it is doing the exact opposite, quietly grinding your engine bearings to dust. Let's get into it. Number 5. The Smart Regenerative Charging System, setting 5, is a software algorithm buried deep inside your body control module that Ford calls the Smart Regenerative Charging System. If you own a modern Ford, you have probably noticed that your battery seems to die every 2 to 3 years like clockwork. You blame the battery brand, but the real culprit is the factory alternator logic. In a traditional setup, the alternator delivers a steady, continuous charge of around 14.2 to 14.4 volts to keep your battery completely saturated. Ford's smart charging system does the exact opposite. It purposefully commands the alternator to drop its output down to as low as 12.2 volts while you are cruising or accelerating. The computer actively prevents the battery from reaching a 100% state of charge, deliberately keeping it hovering at a mere 75% to 80% capacity. The manufacturer's marketing claim is that by reducing the mechanical load of the alternator on the engine, you save a fraction of a percent of fuel. But here is what Ford doesn't tell you about the hidden mechanical reality. Lead acid and absorbent glass mat batteries detest being starved for protection. By forcing the battery to live its entire life in a chronically undercharged state, you trigger a chemical process called severe sulfation. Sulfate crystals harden on the internal lead plates, permanently destroying the battery's ability to hold a charge and drastically reducing its cold cranking amps. I have pulled dozens of battery monitor data logs from trucks experiencing weird electrical ghosts, flickering screens, erratic shifting, and non-functional proximity sensors, and every single one traced back to a battery starved to death by its own truck. Worse yet, when you finally lift your foot off the accelerator to coast, the system suddenly spikes the alternator output up to 15.2 volts to aggressively capture kinetic energy. This massive voltage swing puts immense thermal stress on your vehicle's sensitive electronics and forces the battery through rapid, shallow cycling. You are trading a microscopic fuel saving for a guaranteed $250 battery replacement every 24 months, all while risking a sudden no-start condition. The solution to this is simple and costs absolutely nothing. You can use FOR scan to access the body control module configuration screen. Look for the line item labeled Battery Age or Battery Monitor System. By disabling the battery monitor system completely, you instantly force the powertrain control module to revert to standard alternator logic. Your alternator will immediately begin supplying a stable, constant 14.4 volts, fully saturating your battery, extending its lifespan to 5 or 6 years, and eliminating the erratic voltage drops that confuse your truck's computers. Number 4. The Factory Oil Life Monitor System, setting number 4, is one that Ford markets as a high-tech convenience feature, but under normal driving conditions, it is creating the exact environment that destroys your engine's internal components. It is the Intelligent Oil Life Monitor System displayed on your dashboard. When you roll out of the dealership with a fresh oil change, this system resets to 100%. If you follow that digital gauge down to 0%, the truck will comfortably allow you to drive anywhere between 10,000 and 12,500 miles before flashing a warning to change the oil. Ford claims their advanced algorithms calculate oil degradation based on engine revolutions, operating temperatures, and idling time, making these massive intervals perfectly safe. The mechanical reality inside my shop tells a completely different, brutal story. I have personally inspected rod bearings and cam phaser oil passages on EcoBoost and Coyote engines that were serviced religiously according to the dashboard monitor, and they were completely choked with carbon sludge and varnish. Here is the mechanical mechanism Ford downplays. Modern direct injection engines suffer from an inherent design characteristic known as fuel dilution. Small amounts of raw gasoline wash past the piston rings during cold starts and short trips, mixing directly into the oil pan. By the time that oil hits 5,000 miles, it is already heavily diluted with fuel, which violently shears the oil's viscosity down. A 5W30 weight oil can easily degrade into a thin 20 weight or even a 16 weight fluid. When you push that compromised oil past 7,000, 9,000, or 10,000 miles, the fluid completely loses its film strength. The microscopic oil barrier between your moving parts collapses. Instead of riding on a cushion of pressurized hydraulic fluid, your timing chains start wearing directly against the sprocket teeth, elongating the chains and throwing off your valve timing. The cam phaser vanes begin slamming internally due to a lack of hydraulic pressure, cooking your engine bearings and ensuring a $4,000 repair bill the second your powertrain warranty expires. The damage is entirely cumulative, completely invisible from the driver's seat, and fatal over time. The fix does not require you to buy expensive aftermarket parts. It requires you to completely ignore the factory dashboard advice. Treat the 10,000-mile factory oil life monitor as an absolute fiction. If you want your engine to survive, change your oil and filter every 5,000 miles or 6 months, whichever comes first. If you do a lot of heavy towing or extended idling, drop that interval down to 4,000 miles. By dumping the oil at 5,000 miles, you remove the fuel-diluted, sheared fluid and the suspended abrasive carbon particles before they can drop out of suspension and form the sludge that starves your critical engine components. We are moving up the ladder of severity now, entering the territory where factory programming stops being a minor nuisance and starts directly causing mechanical devastation. The two settings we are about to cover are engineered exclusively to satisfy federal regulatory test cycles, completely disregarding the physical wear and tear forced upon your powertrain. Number 3. The extended factory coolant temperature averaging logic setting number 3 is a deeply deceptive bit of code programmed into your digital instrument cluster that I call the dummy gauge logic. If you look at the coolant temperature gauge on your dashboard, it appears to behave like a precise, real-time diagnostic instrument. It rises as the engine warms up, and then it locks itself dead center in the middle of the normal zone. Ford's marketing implication is that your cooling system is perfectly stabilizing the engine's thermal load under all driving conditions. But as a veteran technician who has monitored raw data PIDs while pulling heavy loads up steep grades, I can tell you that the mechanical reality is a total illusion. The dashboard gauge is not a direct readout of the actual coolant temperatures sensor. Instead, it is an averaged, heavily buffered software output. The computer is programmed to keep that needle dead center anywhere between 190 degrees Fahrenheit and 230 degrees Fahrenheit. The needle will not budge a single millimeter, even as your engine temperatures steadily climb into the danger zone. The manufacturer did this for a very cynical reason. They wanted to prevent customer panic. They realized that if owners saw the temperature needle fluctuating naturally as the engine worked harder, it would lead to a flood of unnecessary dealership service visits. But here is the hidden mechanical mechanism that destroys components. By buffering the gauge, the factory setting strips you of your first line of defense against thermal runaway. On EcoBoost engines, this logic is a death sentence for your turbochargers and cam phasers. If you are towing a heavy trailer up a grade, your actual cylinder head temperatures can skyrocket to 235 or 240 degrees, while your dashboard calmly tells you everything is fine. At those extreme temperatures, the engine oil rushing through the razor-thin clearances of your turbocharger center housing rotating assembly begins to literally bake. The oil turns into hard carbon crust, a process called coking. When you finally top the hill and park the truck, that baked oil blocks the microscopic oil feed passages. The next time you start the engine, the turbocharger bearings are completely starved for protection, causing them to whine, leak, and ultimately seize. Worse yet, the extreme heat degrades the structural integrity of your plastic timing chain guides, causing them to become brittle and snap, dropping plastic debris directly into the oil pan, where it chokes the oil pump pickup tube. The damage is cumulative and completely masked by the buffered gauge until the engine finally crosses the hard threshold of 245 degrees, at which point the truck instantly flashes an emergency engine coolant over temperature warning and drops into limp mode. But by then, the cylinder heads are warped, the head gaskets are blown, and the engine is already junk. The solution to this blind spot is to force the instrument cluster to show you the absolute truth. If you own a modern Ford with a digital screen, you can use 4RScan to activate a setting called View Actual Temperatures above gauges. This simple software change replaces the blank space above the coolant and transmission fluid icons with a live, unbuffered digital number. You will see the exact temperature down to the single degree. If you see those numbers creeping past 225 degrees on a hot day or a steep climb, you now have the actionable data to pull over. Let the engine idle to circulate oil and cool the powertrain down before the factory programming allows a catastrophic meltdown to occur. Number 2. The Decel Fuel Shutoff, DFSO, Transmission Shift Scheduling Setting Number 2 is a highly aggressive software configuration embedded inside the transmission control module known as Decel Fuel Shutoff Shift Scheduling. When you lift your foot off the gas pedal to coast down a hill or approach a red light, the engine computer completely cuts the electrical signal to the fuel injectors. It shuts off the fuel entirely to squeeze out an extra tenth of a mile per gallon. To keep the engine turning over without stalling, the computer leaves the torque converter clutch fully locked, mechanically coupling the transmission directly to the rolling wheels to spin the crankshaft. Ford markets this as a seamless, high-efficiency deceleration feature that costs you nothing. But what actually happens inside the transmission casing is a violent, highly destructive game of mechanical tug-of-war. To extract maximum deceleration energy, the factory TCM programming commands rapid, aggressive downshifts while the fuel is shut off. Because there is no fuel entering the cylinders, the engine cannot match the RPMs of the lower gear. Instead of a smooth transition, the transmission must mechanically force the engine's heavy rotating assembly to instantly speed up. This creates a massive torque spike that travels backward through the entire drivetrain. I have personally inspected worn clutches and scored planetary gear sets from 6R80 and 10R80 transmissions, and the wear patterns are unmistakable. Every single time the transmission executes one of these unassisted downshifts, the internal friction clutches suffer severe micro-slippage. The clutch material violently rubs against the steel plates, creating immense localized friction and shaving off microscopic layers of friction material into the fluid. This cumulative, invisible damage completely ruins the hydraulic properties of your transmission fluid. The suspended friction material clogs the tiny shift solenoids and scores the aluminum bores inside the main valve body. Over time, you begin to experience the classic Ford transmission symptoms: the harsh 1-3 hard shift, the terrifying hesitation when dropping into reverse, and a violent clunking noise when slowing down to a stop. The manufacturer optimized this setting solely to collect emissions credits on a government test cycle. But the mechanical consequence is that the internal components of your transmission are constantly acting as a brake pad for the vehicle, wearing themselves down to bare metal long before their time. To reverse this destructive behavior and save your drivetrain, you must change how you interact with the vehicle's factory drive modes. The aggressive Decel fuel shutoff logic is most destructive when the truck is left in standard normal mode or eco mode, where the transmission is forced to short shift and hunt for gears constantly. The moment you start the vehicle, get into the habit of toggling the drive mode switch into tow.haul mode if you are carrying any weight, or manually downshifting using the progressive range selection buttons on your shifter interface. By using the manual buttons or select drive modes, you alter the shift scheduling algorithms inside the TCM. This changes the line pressure and forces the torque converter clutch to unlock earlier during deceleration, allowing the engine to drop to a natural idle speed and completely eliminating the violent clutch-destroying torque spikes during your daily commute. We have finally reached the top of the ladder, the single most destructive, mechanically deceptive factory configuration programmed into modern Ford vehicles. While the other settings we discussed slowly sap the lifespan of your electrical system, timing components, and transmission clutches, this final setting targets the absolute heart of your engine, systematically destroying its core structural foundation from the very first day you drive it off the lot. Number 1. The factory auto start-stop calibration setting. Number 1 is the ubiquitous auto start-stop feature. The moment you bring your vehicle to a complete stop at a red light or an intersection, the engine control module cuts spark and fuel, plunging the cabin into silence. Ford aggressively markets this system as a brilliant engineering achievement that maximizes city fuel economy, slashes tailpipe emissions, and reduces unnecessary engine idling. They assure you that the starter motor, the battery, and the internal engine components have been heavily ruggedized to handle the tens of thousands of additional cycles without a hitch. But as a veteran technician who has torn down high-mileage engines equipped with this system, I can tell you that the hidden mechanical reality is an absolute nightmare. This setting is so incredibly deceptive because owners actually think it is a beneficial, modern feature saving them money at the pump, when in reality it is actively grinding your main crankshaft journals and connecting rod bearings to dust. To understand why this happens, you have to look at the fluid dynamics of a modern internal combustion engine. When your engine is running, the oil pump forces high-pressure motor oil through the oil galleries and directly into the incredibly tight clearances between the steel crankshaft journals and the soft Babbitt metal bearings. This creates a phenomenon known as hydrodynamic lubrication. The crankshaft does not actually touch the bearing metal. Instead, it literally floats on a pressurized hydraulic cushion of oil that is only a few microns thick. This microscopic oil film ensures zero metal-to-metal contact and zero wear, but the very millisecond the engine stops spinning, that oil pressure drops to absolute zero. The heavy weight of the crankshaft and the pistons instantly squeezes out the remaining oil film, dropping the heavy steel components right onto the bare metal surfaces of the bearings. When the light turns green and the factory setting violently cranks the engine back to life, those metal surfaces scrape directly against each other for a fraction of a second before hydrodynamic oil pressure can be re-established. A traditional engine without auto start-stop experiences this metal-on-metal boundary lubrication state roughly 10,000 to 20,000 times over its entire operating life span, almost exclusively during cold morning starts. A modern Ford equipped with auto start-stop forces the engine to endure that exact same metal-on-metal tearing process up to 300,000 times over the exact same lifespan. I have held worn rod bearings in my hand that were completely stripped of their protective top coating, showing bare copper underneath at less than 80,000 miles. The bearing material is literally shaved away, molecule by molecule, every single time you sit in a drive-thru or wait at a traffic light. The cumulative, invisible damage completely ruins your engine's oil pressure over time because the widening clearances allow the oil to bleed out of the bearings too quickly. This results in top-end oil starvation, destroying the variable camshaft timing phasers and causing the engine to develop a fatal knock. The manufacturer was fully aware of this mechanical trade-off, but they prioritized gathering EPA regulatory compliance points over the long-term structural survival of your engine block to permanently stop this daily destruction. You have to realize that pressing the dashboard override button every single time you start the truck is a flawed strategy because you will inevitably forget. Instead, you need a permanent solution that alters the vehicle's logic. You can use F-ORScan to navigate to the powertrain control module or the body control module configuration screen and locate the specific parameter for auto start-stop. By switching this parameter to disabled, you rewrite the system's logic entirely. The computer will no longer command the engine to shut off at a standstill, keeping your oil pump spinning continuously, maintaining your hydrodynamic oil cushion, and saving your engine bearings from premature destruction. Alternatively, if you do not want to use a laptop, you can install a simple, inexpensive plug-and-play inline bypass harness behind the physical dashboard switch. This hardware module automatically remembers your preference to keep the system off, ensuring your truck starts up in a mechanically safe configuration every single time you turn the key. Conclusion: when you look closely at how these 5 factory configurations interact, a very clear, troubling pattern emerges. Your vehicle was engineered by brilliant minds, but the software calibration was heavily compromised by corporate compliance lawyers and marketing executives. The smart regenerative charging system starves your battery to save a drop of fuel. The intelligent oil life monitor leaves sheared, fuel-diluted oil in your crankcase for double the safe mileage. The extended coolant temperature averaging logic hides critical thermal spikes from you to prevent dealership visits. The diesel fuel shutoff programming treats your internal transmission clutches like brake pads to satisfy emission cycles. And the auto start-stop system repeatedly starves your engine bearings of oil pressure at every single traffic light. Every single one of these settings is designed to get the vehicle past its initial warranty period while posting flattering numbers on paper, leaving you with a severely degraded, high-mileage ticking time bomb once the factory coverage expires. But you do not have to accept the manufacturer's compromise. By taking matters into your own hands, utilizing diagnostic software like ForeScan, and adjusting your maintenance intervals and driving habits, you take back control of your vehicle's mechanical longevity. You turn a truck configured for short-term compliance into a machine built for long-term survival. If this deep dive technical breakdown helped you understand the hidden reality of what is happening beneath the hood of your vehicle, make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this information with another owner who needs to see it. Taking an afternoon to properly understand and correct these factory blind spots is the single best investment you can make in the lifespan of your vehicle. Keep your eyes on the road, keep your oil clean, and fix these settings before they fix your wallet. I will catch you in the next one.